Rain hammered the cracked pavement at 11 p.m., each drop catching in the glow of a broken streetlight. The block was nearly silent, except for the hum of a neon sign flickering above a closed liquor store. Then a single pop split the night. A boy staggered, his sneakers slipping on wet concrete before his body hit the ground with a splash. His eyes stayed open, reflecting the red haze of the liquor sign, the rain streaming across his cheeks like tears that never belonged to him. The shooter stepped forward from the shadow of a brick alley, hoodie pulled low, chest heaving. In his right hand, a black pistol still smoked. He looked down at the teenager sprawled in the gutter. One breath, two. Then he exhaled and lowered the weapon. His face caught briefly in the shimmer of a passing car's headlights. He wasn't a thug from the block. He wasn't some masked intruder. He was a police officer, off-duty, hiding behind street clothes and the weight of a badge invisible in that moment. The victim's body twitched once as if trying to rise. Water pooled dark around him, the outlines of his hands pressing against the pavement before going still. From a distance came the clatter of metal. A trash can toppled, someone running, sneakers slapping puddles as fast as possible. A voice shouted, "Yo, he's down." Then silence, broken only by the hiss of rain. The man in the hoodie turned. His boots splashed as he crossed the street to a sedan parked awkwardly against the curb. Inside, a police radio chirped, static broken by coded dispatch. Unit 43, copy, disturbance on 9th. He slammed the door, the overhead light flashing his face again, pale and tense. The radio continued, its cold voice filling the car with official calm that contradicted the chaos outside. He twisted the dial down but not off, leaving the words to murmur low like background static to what he had just done. Across the street, a security camera bolted to the corner store trembled. Rain ran across its lens, distorting the picture, but the scene still burned into tape. A blurred figure in gray, arm extended, the outline of a pistol visible for 2 seconds before he pulled back. The boy falling. The splash. The shooters walked to the sedan, each frame stamped with a date and time code that would matter later. A passing bus slowed at the stoplight, its driver catching a glimpse of the collapsed teenager. The driver leaned on the horn. The sound echoed down the wet block, harsh and metallic. A window slid open from an apartment above. What the hell happened? Someone shouted into the storm. No one answered. The shooter's engine coughed to life, exhaust smoke rising into the wet air, mixing with the acrid residue of gunpowder still lingering over the body. Rain pounded harder. The teenager's phone buzzed in his pocket, screen lighting up with the name Marcus in pale blue. It rang twice before the vibration stopped. The shooter shifted into gear, tires spinning before gripping the slick pavement. He drove off without lights, taillamps glowing faint red before disappearing into darkness. The bus driver radioed dispatch at 11:03 p.m., voice shaking. Possible gunshot victim, male, 17th and Larkin, send units. Static swallowed the reply. 2 minutes later, sirens screamed across the district, red and blue flashes cutting through rain. Squad cars barreled past, wheels hissing against flooded asphalt. The boy still lay face up, shirt clinging to his chest, rainwater and blood mixing into one spreading stain beneath him. A woman from the corner apartment came down, umbrella trembling in her hands. She knelt but froze when she saw the hole punched into his hoodie. She whispered, "Oh my God." She didn't touch him. Instead, she backed away, eyes wide as the first cruiser slid onto the block. Doors flew open. Boots pounded. Shouts filled the street. "Get back! Everyone back!" The officers moved with mechanical precision, though none bent low to check a pulse until a full minute passed. By then, the boy's chest no longer rose. One officer pulled yellow tape across the corner pole, cordoning the puddle and body inside a bright square under flickering neon. Another collected shell casings that glimmered faintly under the rain, slipping them into plastic. Radios crackled with overlapping voices, units reporting in, supervisors barking codes. all while the gray hoodie the man who fired had already merged with the night beyond 9th Street. The liquor store camera never blinked. Its lens captured the chaos, each distorted frame adding to the archive. Officers stepping in, umbrellas crowding, a stretcher carried but never used. The feed ended with static, but the image remained. A man in a hoodie, a teenager falling, a pistol smoke trail dissolving in rain. The block stayed lit in siren red until well past midnight. Windows stayed shut, curtains drawn, but everyone inside those apartments had heard the shot, had felt the silence that followed, had seen the flashing lights reflect off their walls. What none of them knew was that the shooter was no stranger, no gang soldier. He was a cop off duty, shield hidden, gun still warm. And in the hard drive of that trembling camera, his blurred shadow left behind the only trail that could not be erased. But the bullet wasn't the end. It was the ignition. The city lay divided along a line that was never written on maps but could be traced in broken pavement and neon light. On the east side, white neighborhoods glowed with fresh paint, street lamps intact, storefronts humming beneath bright signage. Across the tracks, the west side sagged with hollow factories, cracked sidewalks, and rows of brick houses left to rot. Patrol cars rolled slower there, and when they stopped, their floodlights stayed longer. At 7 a.m. most mornings, Jamal Carter could be seen walking across that line, sneakers clean but worn thin, backpack slung low, a folded notebook tucked in his jacket. He was 17, tall but thin, with the constant rhythm of a beat tapping from his fingertips. Witnesses at the corner store said he tapped the counter when waiting for change. His friends in the neighborhood said he turned every sound into rhythm. The hiss of the bus brakes, the snap of a soda can, the tick of a crosswalk signal. The corner store where he worked carried the smell of fryer oil and detergent, the floor sticky from years of spills. He stocked shelves at night, filled coolers with soda, and swept the aisles before closing. Security cameras inside captured him laughing with coworkers, hoodie half-zipped, earbuds tucked in, bobbing his head to music only he could hear. On receipts, in the blank space between totals and logos, he scribbled rhymes in jagged ink, lines that would later be found folded into his jacket pocket after his death. At 3 p.m. on school days, he would meet his older brother Marcus at the bus stop. Marcus was 23, shoulders wide, posture straight, the kind of bearing that marked time served overseas. His name was still listed in the Department of Defense records as a Marine who deployed to Iraq. Locals remembered the day he came back, stepping off a bus with his duffel bag, uniform pressed, face unreadable. He found work at the loading docks, heavy shifts that kept his hands rough and his back stiff. Marcus rarely spoke about war. He worked, he slept, and he made sure Jamal stayed fed. In the mornings before leaving for the dock, he packed a sandwich in foil and slid it into Jamal's lunchbox without a word. Sometimes it was ham, sometimes just peanut butter, always wrapped tight. Jamal would find it during his shift, lift it out like a gift, and keep eating while jotting more lyrics on napkins. The Carter apartment sat in a 4-story block with cracked stairwells and paint peeling off the railings. Neighbors remembered Jamal playing beats on the chipped kitchen table, his palms drumming while Marcus watched from the couch. The sound carried through thin walls. One neighbor recalled yelling, "Turn it down," to which Jamal had laughed through the door, "It's just practice." Despite the worn-down setting, Jamal's room held small signs of a teenager building a life. A pressed suit jacket hung on the closet door, tagged for prom night. A photo strip taped above the desk showed him with a girl smiling wide, her arm looped around his neck. On the dresser sat a cheap cologne bottle, nearly empty, and a folded flyer for the school dance where he planned to go with her. At 9 p.m. on the Friday before his death, a witness across the street saw Jamal leaving the corner store after his shift. He wore a black hoodie with the hood up, white sneakers catching the light from a passing bus. He stopped at the crosswalk, tapping his fingers against his thigh in rhythm with the beeping signal. Then he walked west toward home, neon glow fading behind him, the street growing darker with every block. Cameras along the way caught Marcus stepping out of the loading dock an hour earlier, duffel bag slung, his boots heavy on wet concrete. He checked his phone briefly, then boarded the bus heading toward their neighborhood. Later, call logs confirmed Marcus tried Jamal's number at 11 p.m., minutes after the shot rang out. The phone buzzed in Jamal's pocket, screen lighting up his brother's name as his body already lay still. In the days before, Jamal's teachers had noted him distracted, doodling rhymes instead of notes. His coach said he was excited for prom, mentioning the rented tux pickup. His girlfriend had a text thread saved, Jamal writing, "I'll pick you up at 7 p.m. Gonna be the best night." That message would remain unread on her phone after police sealed the crime scene. The contrast between sides of the city was stark even in official records. Property values on the east side averaged 5 times higher than those in Jamal's neighborhood. Police response times were 4 minutes faster. The same week Jamal was shot, City Council had approved funding for new street lamps on the east side, while west side residents petitioned about broken ones left unrepaired for over a year. On Saturday morning after the killing, Marcus stood outside the police line as investigators moved around his brother's body. Witnesses described his face blank, jaw clenched, hands fixed at his sides. Officers stepped between him and the tape, telling him, "Back up, you can't be here." His only reply, quiet, was, "That's my brother." The words carried no anger, only a finality that cut through the noise of radios and sirens. Neighbors gathered at windows as Jamal's body was lifted onto a stretcher at 12:15 a.m. Rain still fell, dripping from the tarp that covered him, the corners of the fabric flapping in the wind. No one in the crowd spoke until the van doors slammed. Then a woman muttered, 17, shaking her head as though the number itself was the crime. Inside Jamal's locker at school, janitors found more scribbled receipts, lyrics about leaving, about making it out, about lights brighter than the ones that ever shone on his block. They became evidence, bagged and labeled, but they were more diary than clue. The handwriting looped careless, the ink smudged, but the rhythm was always there, the beat still pulsing even on paper. The city would argue later about what happened that night, about the officer's claim of threat, about the hoodie that covered Jamal's head, about the time and place. But the camera on the liquor store corner and the memories of his neighbors told a simpler story. A boy walked home after a shift, carrying nothing but words scribbled on receipts and the hope of a dance. But that night, the boy who dreamed in lyrics was silenced by a man who thought he was the law. At 10:52 p.m., cameras from a gas station on 9th Street recorded a teenage boy walking with his hood pulled tight against the rain. His sneakers slapped through puddles, each step leaving a brief reflection of neon signs from the bar across the street. His right hand tugged his backpack strap higher on his shoulder. In the grainy black and white footage, nothing looked unusual. Behind him, the soundscape shifted. Laughter spilled from the bar doors as 3 white men staggered out, voices raised, jokes slurred. They crossed the lot, bottles still in their hands, and one of them shouted, "Run it back, man," before their voices faded into the storm. The microphone on the security system caught the sound of glass shattering against the curb. A minute later, their car pulled away with screeching tires. At 10:56 p.m., another figure appeared on the gas station camera. A man in his 40s, broad-shouldered, hoodie damp and clinging to him. He walked unevenly, head dipping, left hand clutching a pistol against his thigh. Later identification confirmed him as Officer Raymond Doyle, off-duty, 42 years old, his personnel file showing 2 disciplinary notes. His gait that night suggested alcohol. Witnesses inside the bar confirmed he had been drinking heavily. The rain came down harder, flattening Jamal's hood against his head. He passed the edge of the lot, the smell of gasoline mixing with wet asphalt. The boy paused to tap the crosswalk button. Red light reflected on his face, drops sliding off his nose. Behind him, Doyle's footsteps drew closer, shoes slapping water. At 10:57 p.m., a camera angled from the liquor store across the street captured the approach. The officer shouted, "Hey, you trying that car?" The words cut across the lot. Jamal stopped, turned, hands visible at his sides. His voice carried faintly through the storm. "No, sir." The camera had no audio, but a witness leaning against the bus stop later confirmed the exchange. Doyle raised the pistol. No warning, no order. The shot cracked louder than the thunder. Jamal fell backward, arms spread, his body slamming into a shallow puddle. Water splashed high, drenching his face, hood soaking instantly dark. The boy twitched once, then went still, the only movement the rain beating against his body. The gas station feed showed Doyle lowering the gun, shoulders heaving, steam rising off the pistol barrel in the cold rain. For 2 seconds he stared at the teenager's body, then jerked his head around, scanning the lot. His breathing carried through the dash cam of a passing delivery van, harsh, uneven, almost like growls between each breath. The smell of gasoline hung heavy. A customer at Pump 2 ducked behind his car, phone raised, whispering into 911. "A cop just shot some kid. 9th and Larkin. Hurry." His voice shook, the sound of rain hammering metal loud around him. At 11 p.m. sharp, the first patrol unit was dispatched. The log captured the call. Possible shots fired, male down, suspect on scene. By the time the cruiser arrived, Doyle had stepped back toward his own vehicle, a dark sedan parked crooked by the bar. Body-worn camera from the arriving officer caught him wiping the gun on his hoodie before slipping it into the waistband of his jeans. The first responders lit the street with red and blue strobes. Their sirens reflected across rain-slick asphalt, painting Jamal's lifeless face in alternating flashes. One officer shouted, "Secure the scene." Another yelled, "Where's the shooter?" A witness pointed, trembling finger toward the sedan. Doyle raised his hand, flashing a badge. His words carried through the audio. "I'm law enforcement. He went for that car." The justification was immediate, automatic. The bodycam recorded the words exactly as spoken. Jamal's body lay not 3 feet from the nearest car, his backpack still zipped, straps cutting across his chest. The storm masked the smell of cordite, but the air still carried the acrid edge of burned powder. Jamal's blood mixed with rainwater, streaks running toward the gutter, vanishing into the drain. Officers stretched yellow tape across poles. Residents gathered at windows, faces pale behind glass. Some shouted questions, muffled by distance. One voice cut clear. "Why'd you shoot him?" There was no reply. At 11:06 p.m., paramedics arrived. Their gloves flashed white in the siren glow as they lifted Jamal's body. The monitor beeped once, then flatlined. Time of death 11:08 p.m., one paramedic said, voice clipped and final. The words were logged into the official report. Doyle stood under the tape, arms crossed, hoodie soaked. An officer leaned in, whispering, "You sure?" The bodycam caught his reply, sharp, short. "He moved on me." Those 3 words became the official line, repeated later in statements and press conferences. Meanwhile, across the street, the liquor store camera recorded every second. Jamal standing at the crosswalk. Doyle raising the gun. No struggle, no weapon. Just a boy walking home after work. The tape continued running long after, capturing the chaos of the aftermath, the officers' tense movements, the neighbors pressed against windows. By 11:30 p.m., the block was sealed. Reporters arrived, cameras flashing. Rain still fell, dripping off lenses, blurring images. Headlines went out within the hour, teen shot by off-duty officer. At that stage, no names were released, only grainy pictures of flashing lights in the storm. But evidence already existed outside official channels. One of the responding officers forgot to disable his bodycam before discussing the scene with Doyle. Their exchange played out on the recording, the words low but audible. "Doyle, write it clean," he lunged. The officer understood. The file was logged, archived, and later copied by someone inside the department. The first leak surfaced on Sunday morning. A 48-second clip uploaded anonymously to a community forum showed Doyle stepping into frame, gun drawn, and firing without pause. The timestamp read 10:57 p.m. The footage cut just as Jamal collapsed. Within hours, the clip spread across phones, shared on group texts, replayed frame by neighbors who had already guessed the truth. By Monday, national outlets had the file. News anchors played the grainy sequence, slowing the moment Doyle lifted his arm, freezing the instant Jamal's hands were empty, palms out. A single headline echoed across screens: "Unarmed teen gunned down." And when the leaked bodycam hit the streets, nothing was the same. At 9 a.m., the courthouse clock struck while news crews positioned tripods outside the heavy wooden doors. Reporters huddled under umbrellas, microphones ready. Inside, the courtroom filled with a dull hum. Wooden pews creaked as families, activists, and city officials packed the space. On one side, the Carter family sat pressed together, shoulders touching. Across the aisle, Officer Raymond Doyle took his seat in a navy suit, face impassive, his lawyers stacking folders thick with paper. The trial began with the bailiff's call, "All rise." The judge, white-haired, white-robed, walked in. Judge Allen Whitaker, 62, known in records for long tenure and conservative rulings. He sat down, looked over the courtroom, and the voices fell silent. The jury filed in behind the railing. 10 white faces, 2 black, their expressions unreadable as they took their seats. Opening arguments were brief but sharp. Prosecutor stated the charge: manslaughter. His words were steady, recorded by microphones that captured every syllable. A teenager, unarmed, walking home from work, shot dead without warning. He pointed once to the Carter family, then back to Doyle. The defense countered quickly. Doyle's attorney, a man in a striped tie, leaned close to the jury box. His voice carried, "My client acted in self-defense." The victim was dressed like a gangster, in a hood, in a dark lot, near vehicles not his own. The words gangster and hood landed heavy, echoing in the courtroom microphones. Evidence presentation began. Photos of Jamal on the pavement, his hoodie soaked, projected large across the courtroom wall. Gas station camera footage was played, the grainy shot of Doyle raising his arm, the single muzzle flash, the body collapsing. Murmurs swept the gallery. The judge tapped his gavel once. Silence. But the most critical piece, the bodycam clip that had circulated online, was absent. When the prosecutor requested the full file, the clerk of records shook his head. Not available. The file, marked in the log just 2 weeks earlier, had vanished. A motion was filed to delay proceedings until it could be located. The judge denied it within minutes. "Proceed," he said. The Carter family sat rigid. Their attorney rose to object. Voice sharp, "This is suppression of evidence." The judge answered flatly, "Objection overruled." The court reporter's keys clattered, fixing the words into permanent record. Witnesses were called. A man from Pump 2 described hiding behind his car, hearing the shot, and calling 911. On cross-examination, the defense pressed him hard. "You were hiding, weren't you? Rain in your eyes, panic in your voice. How sure can you be of what you saw?" The witness hesitated, nodded reluctantly. "I was scared." His words trailed, cut off by the defense. No further questions. A paramedic testified next. His log confirmed the time of death: 11:08 p.m. He described arriving, the rain, the boy unresponsive. The prosecutor asked, "Was any weapon recovered from the victim?" The paramedic answered firmly, "No." That word echoed clear, the only unshaken detail of the morning. At 3 p.m., the courtroom hushed for closing statements. The prosecutor's voice cracked once as he repeated, 17 years old, unarmed, walking home. Then the defense attorney leaned close to the jury again. His words slow, deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen, an officer faced with a potential threat in the dark. He had seconds to act. He followed his training. This was not murder. This was survival." The jury retired to deliberate at 4 p.m. Reporters filed out, broadcasting updates. By 6 p.m., the jury returned. The foreman rose, holding a slip of paper. His voice read steady. "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." The words struck sharp. Gasps erupted, a woman's voice shouting lies. The gavel slammed 3 times. "Order," the judge barked. Outside, cameras flashed as Doyle exited through the side door with his lawyers. Reporters shouted questions. "Do you feel responsible?" Doyle said nothing, his eyes straight ahead. One protester yelled, "Killer!" Police held the line, pushing the crowd back. At 7 p.m., the police chief held a press conference on the courthouse steps. Cameras captured every word. This was a tragedy but justified. Officer Doyle followed procedure. "We stand by the verdict." His tone was calm, his suit immaculate, the words delivered without pause. Behind him, the city seal gleamed under floodlights. That same night, the Carter apartment became a gathering point. Neighbors placed candles along the steps, wax dripping onto cracked concrete. Marcus Carter stood near the door, head lowered, his hand gripping the railing. Reporters approached, microphones extended. He said only, he was 17 before turning inside. The next morning, the family returned home to find the word thief sprayed across their front wall in red paint. Neighbors described a car pulling away at 2 a.m., its headlights cutting briefly across the block before vanishing. Security cameras from a nearby store captured the taggers' silhouettes but not their plates. The paint dripped thick, the word uneven but unmistakable. The police made no arrests. A statement was issued. No credible suspects identified. The graffiti remained for 2 days before community volunteers painted it over, but by then the image had already spread across social media. Within a week, protests filled the West Side streets. Marches moved under banners with Jamal's name. Police blocked intersections, their shields wet under steady rain. Shouts filled the night air, "No justice, no peace." Videos posted online showed officers firing tear gas, crowds scattering. Reports logged 17 arrests. Through it all, the official record remained fixed. Verdict: not guilty. Ruling: self-defense. Case closed. But another record still existed. A young woman, 20 years old, had lived across the street from the gas station. She had spoken to reporters the night of the shooting, describing how Jamal raised his hands and said, "No, sir." She had agreed to testify. Her name was written on the witness list. On the morning she was due to appear, she never arrived. The bailiff called her name twice in court. Silence. Reporters later confirmed she had left her apartment at 8 a.m., locking the door behind her. By evening, she had not returned. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Neighbors said they saw her walking toward the bus stop, umbrella in hand, then nothing. Her disappearance was logged as unexplained absence. No further investigation was recorded. And with that, one of the last voices willing to contradict the verdict vanished into silence. At 6 p.m., cameras on the loading docks recorded Marcus Carter finishing his shift, lifting a final crate, signing out with a blunt stroke, and walking into the rain without conversation. He moved straight down the block, hood up, past a pawn shop shuttered behind metal grates, and turned into an alley that led to a row of garages behind his building. A neighbor's doorbell camera showed him unlock unit number 4 at 6:11 p.m. and disappear inside with a roll of brown paper under his arm. The garage light clicked on and stayed steady. Through the high window, a lens caught motion over a scarred workbench. Marcus unrolled the brown paper and taped corners to plywood. Under the light, it showed a factory campus outlined in thick marker, a main gate on River Road, a rail spur, a fence line stepping along a drainage ditch, and the logo of a regional transport company printed in a corner. He added small squares with a black pen, then circled 2 entrances in red. Rain rattled the roof while he worked. No radio played. No one else entered. At 7:05 p.m., a hardware store camera 3 blocks away film-rolled him buying heavy gloves, a pry bar, a can of industrial degreaser, 2 road triangles, and a coil of nylon rope. The cashier bagged items without comment. The receipt stamped 7:12 p.m. slid into his jacket. Outside, headlights flashed across wet asphalt as he crossed the lot and vanished behind a passing bus. Back in the garage at 7:30 p.m., the overhead bulb showed more of the space. A low shelf along the wall held a torn shoebox marked with shipping tape. He pulled the shelf aside and lifted a rough section of floor paneling. Underneath, a metal lockbox sat flush with the joists. He set it on the bench, turned a key, and opened the lid. A camera peeking through the window caught contents for less than a second when he raised them to the light. A folded map, a worn set of dog tags on a chain, a pistol in a cloth wrap, and a stack of index cards bound with a rubber band. He spread the cards beside the factory map. When he turned, the lens read the top 3 names in uneven caps before his hand covered them: Doyle, Whitaker, Paget. He wrote more, pressing hard enough to score the wood. A neighbor knocked once on the garage door around 8 p.m. and called through, "You good?" Marcus answered without turning, voice flat, "I'm good." The neighbor left footprints in the puddles and didn't come back. At 9:18 p.m., an exterior camera on the transport company's perimeter fence registered a figure watching from the drainage ditch. The lens caught only a shape under a black poncho, motionless, rain running off the fabric in sheets. A semi eased through the main gate, air brakes venting, red markers blinking as it joined River Road traffic. In the cab, a dash cam stamped route data and showed a driver sipping coffee, unfazed by weather. The plant lot thinned by 10 p.m., one guard remaining in the lit box at the gate, his radio chatter routine and bored. Shortly after midnight, interstate cameras tracked a company tractor-trailer clearing the cloverleaf onto Highway 6. Its load manifest, logged at 11:47 p.m., listed pallets of sealed chemicals used in plastics. The road surface looked slick but manageable. The rain had eased to a mist. At 12:53 a.m., the truck passed mile marker 41. A 2-door sedan followed at several car lengths, headlights low, no plate visible to the rear camera under spray. At 12:59 a.m., the truck drifted right, corrected, and then a flare of orange kicked out from under the rear axle. Sparks streaked the wet lane like a fuse. The dash cam's audio clicked with the driver's short curse, "What the?" Then everything went white. The rear of the trailer erupted. Fire blew beneath the frame, heat rippling the image. The driver yanked the rig to the shoulder, tires screaming. He jumped down, stumbled in foaming light, and yanked a fire extinguisher from its bracket. He emptied it and stepped back, coughing. Did nothing. Flames climbed the trailer's skin with a deep hiss, feeding on wind and chemical stink. At 1:02 a.m., the first 911 call hit dispatch. "Truck on fire, Highway 6, Big 1. Another followed at 1:03 a.m., frantic. "Explosion near mile 42, send everyone." The radio log populated in tight lines. Units toned out. "Engine 12, ladder 5, rescue 2, respond." Sirens rolled from the station, building to a hard wail that cut the wet night. Traffic cameras showed drivers braking, hazard lights flashing red across the lanes, a line of cars forming a glistening border around the heat. State police arrived at 1:09 a.m. Bodycam video recorded waves of heat beating against their faces as they stepped out, rain turning to steam a few feet from the flames. One trooper shouted over the roar, "Keep back." Another set flares in an arc. The truck driver coughed, eyes streaming, voice broken to a rasp. It just lit up. He stared at the trailer skin as if expecting it to peel away. It did. Aluminum slumped, glowing, then dropped with a slap into the shoulder puddles. The smell of burning plastic and rubber crowded everything. Visibility fell to a thick gray. Fire crews attacked from the upwind side. Water hit the trailer and exploded into vapor. Foam spread white across blacktop. At 1:23 a.m., command called for the hazmat team and a second engine. Traffic halted for a mile in both directions. A rear camera on a stalled car captured a sedan pulling off early to the service road and disappearing into a subdivision without headlights. By 2 a.m., the main body of fire fell to smoking ruin. Investigators worked under portable lights, kneeling near the rear frame with cameras clicking. One pointed at the ground and said, "Here." The body mic caught the word plainly. He photographed a wiring harness that looked cut and a set of fresh scuffs near the lower frame, as if something had been mounted and removed. He bagged a fragment of charred strap with a metal buckle intact. Nothing else usable turned up in the ash. While crews cleared the highway, activity spiked back at the factory. At 2:41 a.m., the gate guard stepped outside to smoke under the awning. His security cam recorded a hooded figure moving low along the side wall, shoulder brushing brick, a backpack slung tight. The figure stopped under the company logo painted 20 feet wide and shook a can. The first hiss of paint hit masonry and letters rose in a fast red line, strokes sure and straight. The guard flicked his cigarette, squinted, and started toward the corner. The can rattled again. The message stood 3 feet tall before he rounded the edge and shouted, "Hey!" The hood snapped toward him, then vanished into the drainage ditch and out past the fence line. The guard chased 5 steps into the mud, slipped, and stopped. He stood breathing hard, shoes caked, and stared at the wall. The graffiti read, "Justice for Marcus." The paint ran in the rain but didn't blur the words. Workers arriving for the 6 a.m. shift stopped in small clusters to stare. One man spit and said, "Wrong name." Another answered, "Doesn't matter." Phones came out. Photos went up within minutes. At 7:10 a.m., a local morning show aired aerial footage of the charred trailer and cut live to the factory wall. The anchor's voice carried the angles with practiced calm. Highway 6 southbound reopened after an overnight truck fire involving materials from the River Road plant. No injuries reported. The company has not commented. As you can see, someone has tagged the facility. The shot lingered on the red letters, rain silvering them. Police arrived at the wall at 7:32 a.m. One officer measured letter height with a tape. Another photographed boot tracks along the ditch. A third scraped red drips into an evidence vial. Over the radio, a supervisor asked, "Any cameras?" The gate guard replied, "Glitch at 2:30. Came back up after." The term sat in the log without explanation. By 8:15 a.m., 2 men in suits entered the plant office. Their badges stayed flipped to their chests. One looked at the wall and said, "Clean it." A supervisor answered, "We will." A maintenance worker rolled out a drum of gray paint. He hesitated with the roller raised. Cameras caught his hand shaking slightly. He put the first stripe across the M and then the rest, slow and thorough, until the red disappeared under wet gray. Across town, a postal carrier walked his route along Marcus Carter's block. The carrier's shoulder camera recorded him pushing envelopes through rusted slots with a practiced rhythm. At 9:03 a.m., he slid a plain white envelope without stamp into the gap at the Carter door. It had no return address. The flap was tucked, not sealed. 10 minutes later, a stairwell camera captured Marcus unlocking his apartment and bending to pick up the mail. He sifted with one thumb and stopped on the unmarked envelope. The hall light flickered once. He opened it and held the single sheet toward the bulb. The page showed only one line in block letters, thick and even, printed with a black marker that bled slightly into the cheap paper. The message was simple and centered. "This is only the beginning." At 8 p.m., corner cameras on Ashland Avenue showed groups of young men stepping out of row houses, hoods pulled low, hands stuffed in jackets against the wind. They gathered at the basketball court under the flickering park light. One lit a cigarette and passed it. Another leaned against the chain-link fence, eyes darting toward the street. By 8:22 p.m., 3 cars had pulled up, engines idling, headlights off. A neighbor's porch camera captured Marcus Carter stepping from the shadows, his hood tight, his arm lifting once as if signaling. The cars rolled away in a staggered line. At 9:04 p.m., surveillance from O'Malley's Bar, a known off-duty police hangout, recorded its neon sign buzzing pink above rain-slick asphalt. Inside, 2 uniformed officers leaned over the jukebox, coins rattling. Outside, a crowd of about 15 smoked near the door, their laughter carrying over the street. The bar's parking lot camera caught a sedan without plates creeping past, windows cracked. A second later, gunfire erupted in short bursts. Muzzle flashes strobed from the rear windows, sparks cutting across the lot. Glass shattered in quick sequences. A man at the doorway fell, clutching his leg. Another dove behind a parked car, shouting, "Get down!" Panic sent bodies scattering. One bullet tore through the jukebox window, scattering colored lights across the bar floor. Inside, audio picked up a female officer's scream, "Shots fired!" Radios clicked on as patrons hit the ground. At 9:07 p.m., dispatch logs confirmed first report. Drive-by, multiple shots, officers down at O'Malley's. Patrol units converged, sirens splitting the block. By the time they arrived, the sedan had vanished east. On the pavement, bullet casings glinted under street lamps. EMTs loaded 2 victims, one officer groaning as a stretcher lifted him into the ambulance. By 10:32 p.m., another strike. City Hall's east entrance camera captured a flicker at the edge of frame. A bottle arced in from the darkness, flame trailing. It smashed against the steps, fire exploding into a fan of liquid flame. Within seconds, 2 more followed. The double doors lit in an instant, fire crawling up wooden frames, smoke bleeding into the night sky. The alarm tripped at 10:33 p.m., a siren shrieking through the lobby. Sprinklers cascaded inside, soaking documents, water pouring across marble floors. A security guard shouted into his radio, "Molotov's east entrance. Fire on sight." He dropped his flashlight and pulled a hose reel from the wall, spraying foam against the growing flames. Cameras inside showed council chairs overturned, draped in dripping water, papers plastered across the floor. At 10:37 p.m., Engine 7 screeched to the curb. Firefighters cut the locks with axes, smoke curling around their helmets. By 11 p.m., the blaze was contained, leaving char streaks 3 stories tall. Across town, a different scene. At 11:15 p.m., a candlelight vigil flickered in the Carter apartment. Inside, a phone camera streamed live. Jamal's photo rested on the kitchen table, frame tilted under the soft flame of 3 candles. His mother's hands shook as she lit the wicks. The lighter slipped once, flame biting too close. Marcus steadied it with one hand, then stepped back. Neighbors' voices sang low from the stairwell, the hum caught on the stream. "We remember." The camera zoomed close on her hands, trembling above the candlelight, wax dripping onto her wrist unnoticed. The same hour, down the street at precinct headquarters, the locker room camera recorded officers stripping out of soaked gear. One sat on the bench, face buried in his hands. Another slammed his locker shut and muttered, "It's war out there." The audio caught his partner's reply, "You hear that hit at O'Malley's? That was planned." The radio in the corner crackled with updates. City Hall fire confirmed intentional. No suspects. The room fell silent except for the hiss of showers running. One officer, shoulders hunched, whispered into his palms, "Who's next?" At 11:32 p.m., police scanners burst with another call. Possible IED under patrol unit district lot. Officers rushed out into the night, boots slapping wet pavement. Street cameras followed as squad cars peeled away, lights blaring, engines roaring. Downtown windows lit with the flashing reflection. At 11:39 p.m. in the rear lot of the 14th Precinct, a rookie officer on smoke break spotted wires glinting beneath Unit 28, a standard cruiser parked near the fence. His bodycam captured the instant he froze, cigarette burning down to the filter. He whispered into his radio, "Dispatch, I've got something under a unit, possible device." His voice shook. Another officer ran forward, stopped short, and yanked him back by the arm. "Don't touch it," he barked. Both backed away, eyes locked on the shadows beneath the car. Spotlights snapped on, washing the lot in hard white. Bomb squad was called at 11:43 p.m. Officers herded out, shoving each other in their hurry. Radios filled with urgent voices. "Clear the area, clear the lot." The device sat silent, wires protruding, duct tape visible even from 10 feet away. The camera held steady on the cruiser as sirens from bomb disposal units approached, a new sound over the city's already restless night. And then, someone left a bomb under a patrol car. At 11 p.m., the storm swept across the city with sheets of rain hammering rooftops and streets. Lightning lit the skyline for seconds at a time, cutting hard shadows against the courthouse dome. The precinct sat on Jefferson Avenue, its brick face glistening under floodlights, its flag snapping violently in the wind. Inside, skeleton crews worked through the storm, typing reports, radios hissing with constant chatter about unrest in the South blocks. At 11:12 p.m., a dark van rolled up the alley behind the precinct, its headlights off. Security cameras on the east wall flickered once, then went black. 2 minutes later, the main grid surged, lights inside the station dimming before snapping to emergency red. The storm hid the cut, thunder shaking windows as if masking the intrusion. At 11:15 p.m., a smoke grenade rolled under the rear door. Security footage showed a burst of white fog filling the hallway, officers coughing, hands over mouths, shouts rose. Gas, mask up. Another grenade followed, then the crack of shotgun blasts as glass doors shattered inward. Crew in black hoodies and masks stormed the corridors, weapons raised, moving in formation. They carried bolt cutters, heavy duffel bags, shotguns held low. The first squad room camera that stayed operational captured the chaos. Paper flew as tables flipped. A phone rang unanswered on a desk until it crashed to the floor. An officer ducked behind a vending machine, pistol trembling. A masked figure fired a single round into the ceiling, plaster dust raining down. "Stay down!" A voice barked, recorded clear on bodycam. Officers dropped, hands raised. By 11:23 p.m., the crew had split the building. One cut toward the holding cells, another up the stairwell to the command offices. Marcus Carter walked with the second team, shotgun in hand, water dripping from his jacket onto the tile. His face was bare, no mask, captured by a hallway camera that had not yet been disabled. Lightning illuminated the hallway behind him, each strike flashing his silhouette across the wall. They reached the records room. Inside, cabinets lined the walls, steel drawers labeled with case numbers, evidence logs stacked high. A man already stood there, pistol drawn, waiting. He was younger, leaner, his hair slick with rain, though he had not been outside long. He was identified later as Daniel Paget, the only son of Police Chief Paget. He raised the pistol at Marcus without hesitation. The overhead mic recorded the first words. "Marcus, you killed her in the house of God." His voice echoed off file cabinets, sharp in the empty space. Paget sneered, pistol steady. "She didn't belong." The words snapped short without tremor. Lightning cracked, power surged, the emergency lights flickered. Marcus stepped closer. His reply landed hard. "Neither do you." The room fell silent except for the hum of backup lights. Both men stood locked, weapons raised. At 11:26 p.m., a single shot rang. The round punched through a wooden cross hung on the wall, splinters raining down as it fell onto the wet tile. The camera above the door caught Paget's body twisting backward, pistol slipping from his fingers. He struck the cabinet hard before sliding to the floor, blood seeping across documents scattered beneath him. Marcus stepped past, eyes fixed forward. He kicked the pistol away. The cross lay cracked between them, a bullet hole dead center. Meanwhile, the lobby had become a war zone. Crew hurled more smoke grenades through shattered windows. Officers scrambled to drag wounded to cover. At 11:30 p.m., someone fired a shotgun through the glass front door, spraying shards across the tiled floor. An officer shouted into his radio, "Precinct breached." Multiple attackers inside. Shots fired. His words cut off when the line hissed to static. Upstairs in the chief's office, another camera stayed live. Chief Paget sat cornered, tie askew, his desk overturned. Marcus's crew forced him to his knees. One raised a phone, live streaming to an anonymous account. The camera framed the chief's face in harsh red light, rain battering windows behind him. He raised his hands, voice cracking. "Stop, please stop." The phone streamed every second. By midnight, thousands were watching. Within an hour, the clip would spread across every platform in the city, the police chief begging with hands up. At 11:42 p.m., SWAT vans screeched around the corner. Their floodlights blasted the building as officers in tactical armor poured out. weapons trained on shattered windows. But the live stream kept rolling. The crew inside shouted, "We own this now." A hand spray-painted across a record's wall, Jamal. The name bled in red streaks caught by a still-working hallway camera. At 11:50 p.m., thunder roared again. The building shook as smoke poured from upstairs windows. Alarms screamed, sprinklers dumped water across records and floors. Officers crouched behind patrol cars outside, radios buzzing with frantic updates. "They've got the chief, they're streaming it." Another voice answered, flat, "It's already viral." Inside, Marcus walked past file drawers pulled open, folders scattered. He stopped, grabbed one marked with his brother's case number and held it to the light. The live stream camera swung toward him. His voice came across the feed, unflinching. "You buried the truth, tonight we bury you." By 11:58 p.m., the crew detonated another smoke charge in the stairwell, the building filled with choking haze. Officers outside prepared to breach, but the order never came. Command froze, fearing the broadcast already circling online. The storm raged, lightning striking so close the ground shook. The precinct, once fortress, now stood blacked out, windows shattered, smoke pouring into the rain. And then, with the entire city watching the live stream, the chief of police was seen begging for his life on camera, broadcast unfiltered to every phone in reach. At 2 a.m., aerial footage from a news chopper recorded the city under fire. Plumes of black smoke curled from 3 separate intersections, rising into the storm clouds above. Patrol cars sat overturned, windows shattered, frames smoldering. The streets glowed orange where dumpsters burned, the flames whipped by wind and rain. The camera zoomed on Jefferson Avenue where the precinct stood gutted, its windows blown out, interior walls lit by scattered flames. Lightning illuminated the ruin for a second, freezing the scene in a white flash. By 4 a.m., the governor declared emergency deployment. National Guard convoys rolled into the city from the interstate, headlights in unbroken lines. Dash cameras mounted on armored vehicles showed soldiers in rain ponchos, rifles angled down, faces blank behind visors. Their boots splashed through ash and water as they set up checkpoints across the downtown grid. A police scanner carried the clipped words, "Guard units assume control, civilian curfew in effect." The broadcast repeated on loop until dawn. At 9 a.m., the Carter family held Jamal's funeral at Mount Zion Church. Inside, cameras from local stations panned over pews filled beyond capacity, mourners pressed shoulder to shoulder. Outside, the line stretched down the block, umbrellas bobbing in the drizzle. The choir began with low hymns, but by the end of the service, the sound on live feed shifted. The organ stopped. Voices rose, not in song but in chants, "Justice for Jamal." The words rolled in waves, recorded on every microphone. By 10 a.m., the church steps had become a rally point. The funeral folded into protest, the protest into march. News drones hovered overhead, capturing thousands moving down Main Street, candles and placards lifted high. From above, the line of umbrellas looked like a tide flowing through the city. At 12 p.m., the march swelled into tens of thousands. They stopped at the courthouse. Audio captured chants beating like drums. "No justice, no peace." Riot police lined the marble steps but held position, shields raised, their breath visible in the cold air. Mothers in the crowd lifted framed portraits of their sons beside Jamal's. A helicopter camera pulled back to show the scale. The entire square flooded with people, their voices climbing until they drowned out the sirens. Meanwhile, Officer Doyle had vanished. His apartment was found empty at 3 p.m., blinds torn, drawers overturned. His sedan remained in the garage, dust on the hood. Neighbors told reporters they had not seen him since the night of the precinct assault. Rumors spread through the blocks. One claimed he was smuggled out of state. Another said he fled under guard escort. The darkest repeated in alley whispers that he never left the precinct alive, and his body lay beneath the rubble of the records room, buried under the collapsed cross and files. The rumor was never confirmed, but it stuck. By January, legislative chambers fast-tracked new regulations. On February 2, the governor signed the body camera law. All officers were now required to run live-feed body cams with cloud storage beyond departmental control. The press conference announcing it was brief, the signature caught in sharp flashes. A reporter shouted, "Will this stop another Jamal?" The governor ignored the question, walking off without reply. At the same time, symbols took hold in the streets. Graffiti bloomed on every block, red paint dripping from brick walls and underpasses. The letter J appeared first, massive and crude, then grew more elaborate. Jamal's name stretched across train cars, rooftops, and bridges. Drone footage filmed the side of an abandoned high-rise covered floor to roof with the single word Jamal, blood red, 3 stories tall. Beneath it, sprayed in black block letters, "Justice is fire." At 7 p.m. one evening, a patrol dash cam captured the mural under the setting sun. Its lights illuminated the paint as the words flickered across wet concrete. Pedestrians stopped to take photos. Cars honked in rhythm with chants still echoing months after the shot that began it all. In April, a citywide blackout of police precinct windows appeared overnight. Red JS were painted on every district wall, synchronized as if planned. Security cameras showed hooded figures moving fast, spraying paint in seconds, vanishing before response. By morning, news stations carried the images. Anchors read the captions on screen, from Jamal to symbol. At 11 p.m. that same night, candles lit the steps of City Hall again. Video showed Jamal's mother kneeling before the portrait, hands steady this time as she placed the flame at its base. Around her, hundreds of candles glowed, casting the square in warm light. Overhead, a drone broadcast the image. The portrait framed in firelight, the crowd stretching back into the streets, chanting one name. The records of that night show no new violence, only the silence of thousands gathered under the skyline. Helicopter cameras drifted wide. Smoke still lingered in the distance, but the city looked frozen, its heart lit by flame and murals. From that night, his name was no longer just a name. It was a warning.